Imagine this. You own stock in a company everyone trusts. Safe, solid, American. Then, overnight, it loses half its value. Headlines scream fraud, collapse, scandal. Investors run for the exits. Analysts declare it's finished. The market panics. You panic. Everyone panics. Except one man. Warren Buffett, just 33 years old, looked at this disaster and did the exact opposite. He put nearly half of his money into a company everyone else thought was dead. What did he see? What gave him the confidence to move toward the fire while others ran? And how did that one decision transform him from a little-known investor into the legend we know today? In 1963, Warren Buffett wasn't the billionaire sage he is now. He was still a young man in Omaha, managing a small investment partnership. His office was modest, his reputation promising but far from proven. He studied businesses with almost obsessive focus, but he hadn't yet earned the title Oracle of Omaha. At that moment, he was just another ambitious investor trying to prove he could beat the market. And then, history dropped a test in his lap. The salad oil scandal. Now, the phrase sounds almost silly today. Salad oil? But back then, vegetable oil wasn't a niche. It was big business. And behind it all was one man, Anthony DeAngelis. DeAngelis discovered a loophole in trust. He convinced banks and traders that he had massive tanks filled with soybean oil. Inspectors dipped rods into those tanks, and sure enough, the rods came out slick with oil. What they didn't realize was that the tanks were mostly filled with water, with just a thin layer of oil floating on top. Can you believe that? Really? Can you? Actually, it was the oldest trick in the book, smoke and mirrors. But it fooled everyone. Banks lent him millions. Traders bought his contracts. And who stood behind it all? Guaranteeing the deals. American Express, or as we like to call it, Amex. When the scam collapsed, it was catastrophic. Billions in losses, lawsuits flying, and American Express, once a symbol of trust, was dragged straight into the mud. The company wasn't guilty of fraud, but it had guaranteed loans tied to DeAngelis's fake oil empire. Now, it was on the hook for huge sums. The reaction was brutal. The stock price was cut in half almost instantly. Newspapers called it the end of American Express. Analysts advised selling at any price. Imagine opening the paper and seeing the company you own compared to a sinking ship. Investors didn't just sell, they stampeded. People who had once praised American Express now wanted nothing to do with it. And here's the human side. Think of the fear. Imagine sitting at your kitchen table in 1963, holding American Express shares, watching the price collapse day after day. Your friends are telling you to sell, Wall Street is screaming that it's over. That's the atmosphere Buffett was standing in. Most people caved, but Buffett, he didn't panic. He got curious. Instead of locking himself in an office, Buffett went out into the world. He didn't just rely on reports or analyst notes. He wanted to see the truth with his own eyes. He walked into restaurants in Omaha and New York. He ordered meals. He watched what people used to pay. Time and again, he saw American Express cards. He saw travelers' checks being signed, trusted, accepted. He went to banks. Same story. Amex travelers' checks were still moving across counters like nothing had happened. Buffett asked himself, if customers are still swiping the card, if travelers are still trusting the checks, is this really a dying company? To him, the answer was clear. The brand, the trust between American Express and its customers was still intact. Yes, the company had taken a financial hit, but the core business? Still strong, still trusted, still being used in everyday life. This is where Buffett's genius revealed itself. He didn't just buy a few shares. He made a bold, almost reckless move. He put nearly 40% of his partnership's money into American Express stock. Think about that. Seriously, think about that. 40%, almost half of everything he managed, into one company that the world thought was finished. To his investors, it looked like madness. Imagine entrusting your savings to a young investor, and he tells you, we're putting nearly half of it into a company in crisis. The phone calls came, the doubts, the questions, but Buffett stood firm. He wasn't betting on headlines. He was betting on behavior. He knew people wouldn't stop trusting American Express overnight. He knew the scandal would fade, but the brand would endure. It was a lonely position. Everyone else said he was wrong, but Buffett had conviction. And he was right. He was absolutely 100% right. Within a few years, American Express bounced back. The scandal faded into history. Customers kept swiping, kept signing, kept trusting. The stock not only recovered, it soared. Buffett's massive bet paid off handsomely, multiplying his partnership's returns. But more than money, this decision gave Buffett something even more valuable: credibility. He was no longer just a young man from Omaha. He was the investor who saw clearly when everyone else was blinded by fear. The salad oil scandal turned Warren Buffett from promising to proven. So, what can we take from this? What did you learn today? Even if you never plan to buy a share of stock in your life, here's the lesson. Most people follow the herd. They see panic, they feel panic, they act on panic. Buffett didn't. He separated noise from truth. He asked, are people still using the product? Do they still trust the brand? Is the business still doing its job? This principle isn't just about investing. It's about decision-making in life. Think about the last time the world seemed on fire. Stock crashes, inflation scares, crypto collapses. People rushed to sell, to give up, to run. But the few who stayed calm, who looked at reality instead of fear, found opportunity. Buffett's American Express bet is a timeless reminder. In every crisis, there's signal hidden in the noise, and the courage to trust that signal can change everything. Literally, it can turn around your life. Think about that. And here's the kicker. This wasn't the only time Buffett ignored the crowd. Decades later, in the late 1990s, the world was drunk on dot-com stocks. Everyone said the internet would change everything overnight. Buffett refused to play. People mocked him as old-fashioned. And then, the bubble burst. Billions vanished. Buffett? He was untouched. That story is for the next video.